The top news stories
and conversations that matter to you.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Welcome to the show. David Smith here, in for Rob Snow on a Friday. Thank goodness it is Friday. It's been a busy week around here. Kicking things off on the show today, I'm joined by our regular contributor, Tom Korski, managing editor, Blacklock's reporter. He's been minding Ottawa's business all week long. Hi, Tom. Hope you're doing well this week.
I have no complaints. Thank you for asking.
Excellent. Okay, let's dive right into it here. I'd like to start with the latest on the Pharmacare program that the Liberals and NDP are ever so proud of, even though it's not a real program just yet. The Pharmacare bill has been at a Senate committee this week, one of the final hurdles before it becomes the law of the land. And I understand, Tom, some representatives of the insurance industry, the existing insurance industry, not this new government insurance industry, they were there to testify before senators. Did they raise some concerns about the government's Pharmacare plan?
They pointed out some future conflicts they say they are hearing from literally tens of thousands of employers across the country. What does the bill do? By the way, it's now cleared committee and is going to the Senate as a whole, and Cabinet has said, we want that bill passed by Thanksgiving. What does the bill do? Well, it provides taxpayer-funded insurance for free provision for diabetes, some diabetes, and contraception medication. And it says Cabinet, the future Cabinet, no deadline, must discuss a broader framework. Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, their members make money selling insurance, everyone knows. And they testify in committee, you have a future problem. And the problem is that the vast majority of Canadians, about 27 million people, have workplace plans that cover some prescription drugs. And they say that many employers, they say, as I mentioned, tens of thousands, have made inquiries as to why would I continue to pay for diabetes or contraception medication if the taxpayers of Canada are going to cover it. I think I'll cancel my plan. The Minister of Health, Holland, David, has always disputed this. He said, no, those private plans are much more, they're superior, far better than anything the Government of Canada is going to offer. But the insurer's point is that once the door is open to public insurance, why would you continue to pay for private insurance if you're running a little company? It's a point of conflict. Whether it's a scare tactic or a legitimate risk, we're going to find out very shortly. You know what's interesting, though, David? There was not a lot of consultation on this. There was not years of consultation with the premiers and provincial health ministers to find out what the lay of the land was. It's going to be interesting.
And what did the health minister himself, Mr. Holland, have to say to reporters when they asked him about this testimony from the insurance companies?
Well, he said, I quote him accurately, that's a bunch of malarkey, and I'm just going to wash away that nonsense and malarkey, quote, end of quote. Well, that's pretty definitive. So when someone says, I see a looming problem, and someone else says, that's a bunch of malarkey, there's quite a bit of daylight between those two positions, and the rest of us are going to experience this vicariously.
And when is Thanksgiving again? When is this supposed to pass? Like 2 weeks from now?
He has said that, absolutely. I want that out by the 10th of October.
Great.
Because we're going into Thanksgiving weekend.
That's great.
He may get it.
All right, another story you have this week. Stay tuned on the Pharmacare File. Trust me, stay tuned. Another story you have this week, really interesting. It's about undocumented immigrants. This is much more of a political football in the United States, but we have an issue with it here as well. Asylum seekers, as we call them. The Trudeau government, Tom, as you report, was looking into how Canadians feel about giving asylum seekers citizenships. What did they find?
They found pushback, as you can imagine, an unbelievable pushback, and this is predictable, by people who are here, foreign-born Canadian citizens or permanent residents, who say, wait, whoa. I followed the rules. I didn't walk across the border. I didn't step off a plane at the airport and say, I want to live here now. There were people that complain who spent many, many years following all the rules to come to Canada legally. These are illegal immigrants. What's really interesting to us is that the Prime Minister even polled the question. These are the only polls we read, David, because they're the only polls that Cabinet reads. They commission them. They spend a fortune on these. This was a $900,000 contract. with a pollster, and they asked people, how do you feel about granting citizenship to illegal immigrants, people who have no business being in this country? By the way, they count 500,000 of them. That's a Department of Immigration figure, 500,000 people. And Canadians said, no, I don't think that's a good idea at all. But who raised us in the first place? Who has ever said we should have citizenship granted to illegal immigrants? The Prime Minister of Canada did, and he didn't announce it, and he didn't tell anyone until they disclosed this pollster's report.
Isn't that something? All of a sudden, it's a front burner issue for them. They're getting questions in the media day after day, and they're spending your money behind the scenes polling on it just to figure out what the heck to do. I love that. Okay, one more here. The foreign interference inquiry. It is still going on. It's very complicated stuff, but there was some bombshell testimony this week, and some really important documents came to light. What did we learn, Tom?
This is very far-reaching. My 2 cents, David. I think this is a real Pandora's box for Cabinet. I think this is going to cause them no end of troubles. The official version was, and the Prime Minister said this as late as 2023, I know nothing of foreign interference. I saw nothing. No one told me anything. The Security Intelligence Service never told me. That was the official version. What does the Canadian Security Intelligence Service tell the Commission on Foreign Interference? They say they told the Government of Canada, including the Prime Minister's office, 163 times. They document 163 separate meetings with literally anyone who would answer the phone at the Government of Canada to say, look out, there's potentially illegal activity going on involving Chinese Communist Party agents. And this is the crucial question now facing the China inquiry. Why did they do nothing? David, the dark implication is, because you know who was getting the stick from those foreign agents and interference? Not Liberal MPs. It was affecting Conservatives and New Democrats, and the implication is, this is staggering, that Cabinet did nothing when told of potential felonies involving foreign agents because it was okay with our team. Unbelievable.
163 separate warnings about foreign interference over 6 years. And Trudeau said, and he stood by it at the time, Tom. I remember the press conferences. I did not know about the foreign interference. How many times did he say that?
Oh, it was the timing also. He said it multiple times. But the most recent time was in May 2023, literally weeks after his office was given a memo in black and white that said, and I quote accurately, that Chinese foreign agents pose an existential threat to Canadian democracy, end of quote. Just think about that. The Prime Minister of Canada, of a G7 country, is told organized crime represents a threat to our democracy. And he walked out the door and told a bunch of reporters, no one told me. What? That's what happened.
My goodness. All right, Tom, that's our time for this week. Thank you so much, as always, for coming on the show and sharing some of your reporting with us. Thank goodness you are minding Ottawa's business. Somebody ought to.
Thank you, David.
That's Tom Korski with Blacklock's Reporter, one of our regular contributors here on the show. I'm David Smith. Barry McLaughlin coming up next. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
You have questions
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
on News Radio.
David Smith here, in for Rob Snow today. Thank you for joining us. Joining me now, our regular contributor, Barry McLaughlin, President, TLC Transformational Leadership Consultants, Fellow of the Masters of Political Management program at Carleton University, also lectures at the Shannon School of Business at Cape Breton University. Hi, Barry.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm doing fine this week. How are you?
Good. I'm already enjoying your show today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very kind. Barry, I'd like to start with your takeaways from this week's vice presidential debate in the U.S. I think Tim Walz underperformed a little bit, and a lot of the punditry I see is giving an edge to J.D. Vance. So who do you think came away with the win here? Do you think the Democrats or Republicans came out ahead after that debate?
Well, they always say that it takes 2, 3, 4 days for the impact of a debate to sink in, and I think that has happened. I think the sinked in now how people feel, the general perception, certainly media coverage, has been that J.D. Vance won that debate. We did not expect this from this guy, hammering women for being, cat-loving ladies or whatever. I mean, all of his silly things, just a disastrous start for a guy that Trump had thought was going to be a winner. But sure enough, in spite of everything, and as you said, really, he did exceed expectations. He came across as a relatively normal guy, which is all what he had to do. He's to show he's a human being with real feelings. Everything wasn't an automatic partisan hit job. He was, gracious with Tim Walz. It was not at all what we were expecting, and very un-Trump-like of him. So I think that he is the winner of that debate. I think Tim Walz, he always said from the beginning, I'm not a good debater. Like he was trying to get that message across early on, but nobody really listened to him because we liked his clips, and he's just a down-home guy from Minnesota, under the hood checking out the engine, and oh my gosh, a coach, everything. But it didn't quite come off that way. Like he was very stiff. He kind of fumbled the ball when he was attacked, a little bit defensive at times. Not really the Tim Walz that we thought we knew. Now, good news for him. Probably the vast majority of Americans couldn't pick him out of a lineup, maybe much more than they could Vance. So it didn't do a lot of real damage to him, but it certainly didn't move the Harris ticket forward per se. It did move, I believe, the Trump ticket forward. We did a seminar yesterday, Laura Peck and I, and these are senior people, and we, lunch hour chat, how do you think that debate went? Overwhelmingly, people said, you know what? It kind of made me think differently about Trump. I think Vance did very well. Whoa, these are people that pay attention, So I have to say, we don't necessarily know, but an extremely tight race. It doesn't have to be a home run, but a solid single. Yeah, he smacked a solid single out into the outfield, no question about it.
Do you think that establishing a little bit of contrast between the style of J.D. Vance and Trump is beneficial to the Republican campaign? Was that a goal there?
I think it has to be. I mean, Trump gets in the way of his own message. He doesn't know how to stick to, if he stuck to the economy and the border, and just get his own stupidity, ridiculously ludicrous, Hannibal Lecter kind of ridiculousness, if he took that out of play and just focused on what he needs to do, pick the issues that A, people care about, and B, your opponent is weak about. Well, I just mentioned them. And, no, he's got to get into everything. He has completely zero discipline. And so he's showing that. And every day he opens his mouth, it's worse. So I'm saying that, and, there's a long record of him doing that. If Vance executed some of the same discipline that he demonstrated in the debate, he could continue to help him. So it would have to be just a one-off, because people are so sick to death of the clown car show. They want that circus out of town. And so they need to completely rethink. Let's get disciplined. Let's keep Vance out there and being a reasonable guy, not a guy about, he triggered that whole thing about Springfield and the, eating dogs. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I think that they all have lessons to learn. The issue is, though, will the Trump-Vance ticket learn the lessons? This is a huge question mark.
Okay, switching gears a little closer to home. We are at the end of a third week of the fall sitting of Parliament. Here in Canada, the Conservatives have lost a pair of non-confidence motions now. The Bloc is doing what it can to get some concessions from the Liberals. They have this October 29th deadline before they say they're ready to pull the plug. The NDP is doing whatever it is they do. I'm not really sure anymore. But if you're advising the Prime Minister, Barry, how should he handle this political tinderbox?
Well, I don't think he can cave in to the Bloc demand. I heard it was something like $3 billion a year thing, and completely not the strategic focus of this government at this time. And if he looks like he's going to cave on this, then every single week is a week that's going to have one of these let's pull the plug now kind of, we're playing chicken here. We're playing chicken with government. We're playing chicken with with Canada right now. And I think it's far worse than the Prime Minister had realized when this session took hold. We all thought, once the NDP pulls the plug, oh my God, probably the NDP won't because they're not really ready for an election. But we didn't really factor in very strongly the Bloc. They only have to care about Quebec. And this will be a winner for him in Quebec. If he pulls this government down, the Bloc will do very, very well. Thank you very much. And so we've got a situation now where if I was advising the Prime Minister, I'd say, sir, as we get nearer and nearer that date, you're going to have to prorogue Parliament. Because if you don't, you'll go down and everything will go down with you. You cannot turn this ship around between now and December, sir. So you're going to have to prorogue. It worked for Stephen Harper, and a year or two later he had election and he won, hands down majority government. So proroguing Parliament will become necessary if he wants to survive. And of course, if he's really smart, he'll prorogue and announce that he is going to leave. There'll be a leadership campaign during the proroguing of Parliament. Back comes a new Prime Minister in February, whatever it is. They have the budget, and we have an election later in the spring, and we'll see what happens then. I believe that's what has to happen.
That's very interesting. So you think Trudeau stepping down really is still in the cards?
Yeah, absolutely.
As a strategic move. Yeah,
if you watch him over time, getting on Colbert and doing his UN thing, and now he's over in France, he's Francophone Summit. His father did the farewell global tour before he stepped down, and I think that he sort of sees himself as a global player anyway, and I think he's out there. You'll see maybe a few more of these. He is shaping his brand. He's going to walk away as undefeated Prime Minister, 3 elections. He's even boasting about that on Colbert. 3 elections in a row. Wow, that's amazing, sir. So why leave a loser? Why bring everybody down with you? Trudeau knew how to step out as father, and was he crying terribly when John Turner was defeated a few months later? Not really. Turner lost it for him. Campbell lost it for Mulroney. On and on and on. So I'll bet you he will. I now realize I believe he will step down. And I don't think, yes, of course, every Prime Minister, if they're smart, they're running, yes, we're running, until the moment they're not. Do not leave any ounce of oxygen between that. The moment you say, I think I'm stepping down, I might be stepping down, they will, you'll lose control of your caucus, they'll run for the exits, people will pile on, and it's a very messy departure. So I think that he will be running actively until the moment he isn't.
Okay, we have to leave it there for this week, Barry. Thank you so much for your time, as always.
My pleasure, David.
Great chatting with you. That's Barry McLaughlin, TLC Transformational Leadership Consultants. I am David Smith, in for Rob Snow today. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on the Newsday panel.
David Smith here, in for Rob today with the Newsday panel on a Friday. I'm joined on the line by Neil Brody, longtime conservative strategist. Hello, Neil.
Good afternoon, David.
And Alex Creston's here as well, vice president with Crestview Strategy. Hello, Alex.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you all for joining. To start, I want to pick up with something I talked about with the callers to this show yesterday. What do you think some key wedge issues might be in the next election? I think gun control will be a big one, especially if Donald Trump wins the U.S. election. They'll say Poilievre is in the pocket of the NRA, even though, as I keep reminding people, the Liberals' marquee gun buyback program has yet to buy back a single gun after 4 years. So, Neil, I'll start with you. What do you think some big wedge issues might be when it comes time for the next election?
Well, David, I think that they fall into 3 main categories. There's the social wedge issues. Guns, I would put guns in there, but abortion and gay rights would be in there. Entitlements, that is dental care, pharmacare, and other random spending initiatives. And then there's the U.S.-style wedge issues, and you're seeing this come out now in the current rhetoric in Ottawa, is talk around rights and democracy. It's easy to wedge people on those issues. They do differentiate between the two parties quite obviously, and it's nothing new for the Liberals. The Liberals have constantly told Canadians that a whole bunch of rights are going to be rolled back, democracy is going to come to an end, and especially with Mr. Poilievre's promise to fix the budget, the Liberals will be out saying Conservatives are going to cut, and if there's something you like or you enjoy getting money from the government for, you can kiss that goodbye if the Conservatives get elected.
Alex, what do you think some big wedge issues might be in the next election?
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I think that there's sort of the things that the Liberals will trot out are that I don't know about gun control really, but there will be things. It's always about appealing to people's fear or anxieties, and I think they'll be looking at trying to get people, worked up about protecting the things that the Liberals feel that they have worked really hard to build, whether that's child care, dental care. They always talk about, to try and fearmonger about health care. I think the other one that they're going to bring up is climate change, and they'll try to saber rattle and say that if the Conservatives are elected, then somehow it's going to impact global climate.
Okay, now for a Conservative candidate, on what I have observed so far, Neil, is Pierre Poilievre's defense on some of these issues, when he's accused of wanting to cut the quote-unquote national school food program, or he's accused of wanting to cut pharmacare. His defense seems to be, well, these programs don't actually exist anymore. Pharmacare is still in the Senate. The national school food program, it's not serving any meals as of yet, so these things don't exist. How can I cut what doesn't exist? That works fine, I think, for the school food program for pharmacare, but for dental care, as another example, that is a real program. There are people out there who are having dental care covered who didn't have insurance before. So what is your strategy as a Conservative to defend against some of those wedge attacks?
Well, you do one thing and one thing only. That is stay on message. The Conservatives have been up by plus or minus 20 percentage points in the polls for at least 2 years now, probably longer than that. My brain won't work that well anymore. And it's not time for any new messages to clutter up the space. What's been working is a simple 4-idea message: axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. Anybody who's out talking about anything and their opponents or the media try to wedge them on something, you pivot from what they're talking about to what you want to talk about and reinforce the message. So if you're talking about, are you going to Conservatives love guns? Well, what's even worse is that the Liberals are soft in crime and letting people out on bail, and Canadians never felt less safe. And if you elect a Conservative government, we'll stop the crime. So I don't think there's anything new that the Conservative candidates or Conservative MPs have to do. They just have to reinforce the message that has gotten them a 20-point lead in the polls.
Do you agree with that, Alex? If you're advising a Conservative candidate, how do you bob and weave and duck the wedge attacks?
Yeah, I think that's right. There's I think back to, even when you mentioned the gun wedge, I think back to the last time a Conservative government took over from a tired Liberal government. The Liberals tried to make the same claim, all while their national gun registry was costing billions and not registering any guns. And the Conservatives had a policy of mandatory minimum sentences for gun crimes. It was a useful, if they're going to try and wedge you, you can wedge them back. There's always, insofar, Poilievre and the Conservatives have had a really good ability to actually talk about these issues the way that real people think about them. And I think they'll continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's working for them so far. As Neil mentions, they've been up for almost 2 years in the polls, and some people say they are approaching 50% outside of Quebec. So it's about staying out of their own way, I suppose, at this point. All right, we have to stop here for a short break. We'll be back in a couple moments with our panelists. We'll talk a little bit more about one of the chief criticisms that I hear about Pierre Poilievre and whether he really needs to do anything about it. That's still ahead. I'm David Smith. This is the Newsday Panel. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
David Smith here in for Rob Snow today. It's the Newsday Panel. I'm joined by Neil Brody and Alex Creston. So, guys, one of the chief criticisms I hear about Pierre Poilievre from callers to this show and people in my own life is that they don't know enough about what he will do if he becomes prime minister. People, understandably, I think, want to hear more about his specific policy proposals. You know, they know he's going to axe the tax, fix the budget, build the home, stop the crime. Great, but what does that look like? Why is it good political strategy for the CPC to play their cards close to the vest at this point? And do you think we'll see something like a platform document released before the writ drops? Alex, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I don't think, just right off the bat, I don't think we're going to see a detailed campaign platform released before the writ drop. And I know it's sometimes, I heard it from my barber last week. He was saying the same thing. I say, well, I like this PR guy, but what's he going to do? Well, you know what? Now is not actually the opportune time to start to get into the details because most people actually aren't paying attention. So all you end up doing is forecasting your strategy ahead of the election and giving your opposition a chance to build a counter strategy against you. Right now, the Conservatives are doing well in the polls. They're getting attention where they need it, and so much of the trouble in opposition is getting anyone to notice you at all. That's not happening right now, so they don't really need to be, making big announcements or sort of setting off fireworks to get someone's attention. They'll wait until the time is right, sort of till they see the whites of their eyes, and then they will start to roll out a policy. But I don't think we'll see that till the actual campaign has started.
Neil Brody, over to you. It is a common complaint, but do you think that there's any downside to the Conservatives just sticking it out? Are they at risk of losing accessible voters if they're not more forthcoming with some specific policies?
Well, like a lot of smart people in Canada, I agree wholeheartedly with Alex's point of view, except for the fact that I haven't been to a barber in about 20 years. I'll just add to his point. Two reasons not to go out too soon with details is so, as an opposition party, is so the government doesn't steal your ideas. Back in the 90s, a young man named Preston Manning came to Ottawa with a whole bunch of good ideas in opposition, and Jean Chrétien, the Prime Minister of the day, stole them all, enacted all of them. By the time the election came around, the Reform Party had really nothing to run on. They had to come up with a whole new set of ideas to run on. Secondly, if you keep political messaging or any sort of messaging ambiguous, it allows more consumers of that messaging, in this case the voters, to fit themselves into your party's narrative. One of the points that Pierre makes and Mr. Poilievre makes is fix the budget. Well, that's ambiguous enough that fixing the budget to somebody might mean balance the budget. To another person, it might mean cut corporate subsidies. To another person, it might mean reduce the public service by 50%. Keeping high level messaging like that allows the Canadians to fit themselves wherever they see themselves fitting into the conservative messaging. Once you start becoming more and more specific, it gives people more and more reason to step away from that because they may not like the specifics of what you're saying. So, much like Alex said, I don't expect an overly detailed platform to be out before the election. I think in this day and age, I don't even think I expect an overly detailed platform to be released during the election. The platforms are essentially released for two audiences, the media and the public service. The media so they can write stories, and the public service so they can prepare for the eventuality of an incoming government. I don't know any, quote-unquote, average Canadian who will sit down and pore through four parties' platforms and say, oh, yes, I like the idea proposed on page 32, paragraph 6. Those are great things to put out platforms, but their value to the average voter is approaching zero.
I like the platform documents for the Control F test. That's my favorite part of platform season because you can go Control F affordability. And, liberals, you dummies, you only have it in there 42 times, and the conservatives have it in there 108 times. Clearly, you don't care about it. All right, let's stop here. Stop a little early here. We'll come back. A couple more topics to get to. With the Newsday panel, Neil Brody is with me, Alex Creston from Crestview. I'm David Smith, in for Rob Snow today. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
David Smith in for Rob Snow today. Thank you for joining us. It's our Newsday panel with Neil Brody and Alex Creston. I want to talk about this whole minority parliament early election speculation story. Neil, how do you see this minority government eventually meeting its end? I think that Trudeau may prorogue parliament, but I think he'll do it after Christmas. Not everyone agrees. What do you think about that?
No, always is that when a government decides to end its life as a government, that party goes into an election running on something. Going into an election in January means the government is running solely on the wedge issues we discussed earlier in the show. I'm not really too sure that's a winning strategy for them. Hey, vote for us because we're better than the other guy. I still believe that it's useful and beneficial to have something in the window, as they say, to sell to Canadians. I think if they are to end this Parliament early before the next fixed election date, which is a year from now, next October, I think the natural time to go is after they introduce a budget in whatever it is, March, April time period, because then you can take something to Canadians that you can sell to them. Hey, vote for us because, as you've seen in our budget, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't vote for us, you won't get that because the Conservatives won't be doing that. They're going to be, giving guns to everybody and shutting down hospitals or whatever they might say. So January, maybe. You never say never, but there's nothing really to sell in January as opposed to later in the year.
So maybe could just call a snap election after they've tabled a budget, or do you think they'll try and actually pass a budget and maybe go down swinging on the vote?
No. That's how it would mechanically occur.
Okay.
If you work back from mid-June kind of time period, mid-May, beginning of May is when you would have to call an election for that. So if you introduce a budget, mid-April, it gives the opposition time to look at it and say we're not supporting this and trigger a vote that brings down the Parliament.
Okay. Alex, what do you think the timeline is going to look like there? Just speculation, because it's fun.
Yeah, and just because it's fun, I'm just going to throw out the idea that maybe they don't go on their own timeline. Okay. And I think that things have just, as much as I know I've said, on this show before, that I think that the incentives aren't there for anyone other than the Conservatives to bring the government down. I kind of get the idea that maybe the Bloc is willing to go to an election sooner than than later, and if they're not able to get what they're looking for, that they might be able to move along this way. And let's just, for argument's sake, say maybe the NDP also decides to abstain from a vote. It also gets more and more volatile the more we have sort of two different parties that the Liberals are trying to negotiate with. Yes, that gives them more options, but it also can lead to a bit more confusion if it just comes down to, are we counting the votes? Are the right people in the House? Are we able to get this done? And we sort of, people like us who love the sort of political theater can think, it was long before my time, but the Joe Clark government that came down by accident. There's there's sort of opportunity for surprises here, and I think there's clearly been some rankling in the House and different strange things happening with votes this week that might lead you to believe that maybe the Conservatives and the Bloc are getting a little closer than it would have sounded, than I would have thought 2 weeks ago.
Right. Well, we'll see what next week brings. But for today, that is our time, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining the show today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, David. Have a good weekend, Alex.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you. That's Neil Brody, longtime Conservative strategist, worked on Parliament Hill for many years. Alex Creston is a vice president with Crestview Strategy. I am David Smith. Coming up after the top of the hour, it's Talk Back on News Radio 1-833-668-2577. We'll do a Friday free-for-all, open line, open topic, but I do have some stories I would like to get your take on. All of that is still ahead. Your local news is coming up next. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Welcome to Talk Back on News Radio. I'm David Smith, in for Rob Snow today on a Friday. Thank you for joining us. Phone lines open now at 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. And as usual on a Friday, I am happy to take your lead on the conversation today. Open line, open topic. Just call us up at 1-833-668-2577. Let Andrea know what you want to talk about. Get on the air to have your say. That's how we roll on a Friday. I do have a couple of topics I want to put out there for you to consider. The big one for me today, criminal justice and public safety. If you haven't been following the story, this week in Toronto, a police officer was shot on duty. It happened on Wednesday afternoon. A 29-year-old Toronto police officer stopped two suspects outside an apartment building during a robbery investigation, and the suspect shot him in the stomach. He's expected to make a full recovery. He's in hospital right now in Toronto. We've since learned that the man who's accused of shooting the cop was out on bail for another crime. Out on bail. This person and one of their co-accused was arrested in May and charged with more than 24 offenses, including possession of a vehicle, a stolen license plates, breaking and entering multiple homes, and breaching, get this, an earlier probation order, Already on probation, charged with 24 offenses, out on bail again, allegedly shoots a cop. He was released the same day after that arrest back in May. On Wednesday, he's charged with attempted murder. So this case has reignited the debate about Canada's bail system. I'm going to play for you some excerpts from yesterday's question period in the House of Commons. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre had questions for the government about this case of the Toronto police officer shot in the stomach on Wednesday.
We see the case of the dirtbag Tibor Organo, who shot a police officer in the stomach yesterday while he was out on bail after having been arrested for 24 offenses he committed while he was out on probation. So let's get this straight. He's out on probation for many crimes. He gets arrested for violating probation, so he gets released on bail and shoots a police officer. When will this government finally accept that their hug-a-thug, catch-and-release system is putting our people at risk?
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was not in the House of Commons yesterday. He's in France on an international junket. Government House Leader Karina Gould answered Pierre Poilievre's question.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts go out to the police officer because no police officer should be hurt in the line of duty. But, Mr. Speaker, what is extremely concerning is what the Leader of the Opposition is doing in this House today, where he is trampling the charter rights of Canadians. Whether it is in this House, whether it is outside, Canadians need to be extremely alarmed about the fact that when it comes to their rights, his first instinct is to trample over them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Not much of an answer, if you ask me. Back over to Mr. Poilievre.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I think you have a charter right to get released after 24 offenses while you're already on probation and shoot a police officer in the stomach. I'm more worried about the charter rights of the police officer who's recovering from the gunshot. This is what the police officer said. Almost everyone we arrest is out on bail. No one stays in jail where they belong. The city and the feds just don't care. It just doesn't bother them. It doesn't matter how many die and if a cop gets shot. That's right. What's wrong with you people?
Canada's Justice Minister, Attorney General Arif Virani, rose to answer.
Mr. Speaker, when the men and women in uniform in my city of Toronto or right across the country are harmed in the course of their work, they deserve our absolute respect and solidarity, which we always provide to them. In terms of decisions that are made about bail, these are important considerations. They're considerations where we've made amendments to the bail regime. What happens after amendments are made at the federal parliament is that the ball turns over to the provinces. We need to ask genuine questions about who's making decisions about granting or denying bail. Provincially appointed JPs. About provincial crowns who are making decisions about whether to review bail and what kind of conditions to impose.
So the Justice Minister there is pointing his finger back at provincial governments. And in my opinion, those comments you just heard were directed mainly at Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Doug Ford has repeatedly called on the federal government over the past 2 years to make it harder for people to get out on bail if they're repeat offenders. Doug Ford even created a new cabinet position in Ontario. We now have an Associate Minister of Auto Theft and Bail Reform. He was appointed last month. Now, the Trudeau government did respond to calls from the provinces last year on bail reform. In January of this year, new rules did come into effect, making it harder for repeat offenders accused of violent crimes, firearms offenses, and intimate partner violence, making it harder for them to get out on bail. I think those changes make sense. Someone who has been charged with multiple violent offenses in the past should have a harder time getting out on bail. Makes sense to me. But my question would be, does it go far enough? 1-833-668-2577. Are you concerned that it is still too easy for repeat offenders to get out on bail in Canada? 1-833-668-2577. The man who allegedly shot that Toronto police officer, he had been charged with multiple crimes before, but they weren't the kind of crimes that are covered under the new bail rules. He hadn't been charged with any firearm offenses, nor with intimate partner violence. Just theft and break and entering. A lot of theft and a lot of break and entering. He and one other person racked up more than a dozen charges. Then they were released on the same day. Now he's charged with attempted murder of a police officer. What do you think about that? I would welcome your calls on that. A terrible thing, a difficult topic, and a complicated one. But that's why we do this show, to hear from you about the tough topics of the day. Are you concerned it is still too easy for repeat offenders to get out on bail in Canada? We can talk about that or anything else you want. Just give me a call. 1-833-668-2577. Phone lines available. We'll take a short break. Your calls coming up next. I'm David Smith. This is Talk Back on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
I'm David Smith in for Rob Snow today. Thank you for joining us. 1-833-668-2577. Caller John on the line from Calgary. Hi, John.
How you doing today?
I'm fine. What's your opinion?
Listen, I listened to your comments, and my opinion is that repeat offenders should be in jail. I believe everybody should get a second chance. But when you're a repeat offender, this is happening way too much in Canada, in the United States, and I bet you 95% of the people want repeat offenders in jail. And our governments, like Trudeau and the Liberals, need to stop sending our tax dollars to unnecessary causes and put them into prisons. The reason why they're not in prison is because they got no money to put them there, but they rather give money and waste our money on foolish, unnecessary value to Canadians.
Okay, heard, John, heard. Now, let me ask you this. On the bail issue, the Trudeau government has indicated they have strengthened bail laws, but only for certain offenses, certain violent offenses, firearms, intimate partner violence. But you think that if somebody's got a rap sheet, as long as this guy who's accused of shooting the Toronto police officer, like I'm talking a dozen charges, you think it should be harder for him to get bail than somebody who maybe it's their first offense or something like that?
Absolutely. Look how many times we're hearing about this. Not only here, if you put on news from the U.S., they got the same problems. And it just seems to me that Canada, we're just 6 months behind what the United States does. And all their stupidity comes to our country because of the same woke government we got in power in Ottawa. People want to walk the streets and feel safe. You know what? I'll pay my taxes. I'll pay for whatever you want me to pay. I'll do my share. And you know the only thing I want from this government, any government, whether it's provincial, municipality, or federal, I want to be able to walk the streets in my neighborhood and not fear for my life. That's all 95% of Canadians want. But these people like making up stupidities and spend our money where we, as a Canadians, get no value.
So the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, he says jail, not bail. Jail, not bail.
Right,
you like
jail.
that message from him. You like that message.
Absolutely. And show me who doesn't, with the exception of a few advocates who get paid to talk about this stupidity at the expense of the cop in Toronto and other innocent people.
Well, I guess the flip side of the argument, John, and that's what you heard the Justice Minister saying in those clips I played, is that it's a slippery slope when we start messing with the presumption of innocence. I mean, bail is there for a reason. It's to protect innocent people from being detained by the government.
You know what? When you have repeat offenses, 20, like in this particular case, that's not innocence. That's not innocence. I get it. Brains prevail. But when a guy's got 20 offenses and you put him on bail, you're just looking for trouble. I mean, come on. The issue's getting totally out of hand, and there seems to be no fear of committing crimes anymore. You got gangs everywhere. People are getting shot in the street. I just hope what's going on in the U.S. is not coming to Canada. But if we keep up with this stupidity, we're going to wake up with the same problems one day.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your call today. John in Calgary, 1-833-668-2577. Do you agree with John? Disagree with John? A little bit of both. Give me a call and let me know. On the bail reform story, if you're just catching up, police officer in Toronto was shot by a suspect during an investigation this week. A nightmare. That's the nightmare scenario for any law enforcement officer. The accused is a 21-year-old who was out on bail at the time. Not for parking tickets, not for noise violation, for multiple past criminal offenses. Yesterday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford placed the blame on the federal government for not toughening bail rules in Canada. Doug Ford tweeted, he said, quote, "I'm relieved to hear the Toronto police officer who was shot in the line of duty yesterday is being well cared for, and I'm praying for his swift and full recovery. But the guy accused in this shooting should never have been out on bail. Enough is enough. The federal government needs to do its job and fix our broken bail system so we can keep dangerous criminals behind bars and off our streets." End quote. Do you agree with the Ontario Premier? Do you share that sentiment? 1-833-668-2577. Give me a call on that story or anything else. Open line, open topic. Lines available. 1-833-668-2577. I'm David Smith. We're back in a few moments here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith here in with you for Talk Back today. Pretty serious subject that we've been talking about so far this hour, but I'm open to taking calls on any topic today. Just give us a call, 1-833-668-2577. But I've been thinking a lot this morning about bail reform. Do you think it's still too easy for repeat offenders to get out of prison, out of remand, on bail? These are people who are waiting for a trial, right? They've been charged with a crime, accused of a crime, they're waiting for trial. Instead of putting them in a provincial remand center, they're out on bail, on condition. Problem is, we have a whole swath of cases over the last 2 years in this country where repeat offenders with long rap sheets are committing crimes while they're out on bail. On Wednesday this week, a police officer in Toronto was shot in the line of duty. He's going to be okay, but the person accused of shooting him was out on bail. Curious to hear your thoughts on that. Caller on the line, Paul from Cambridge. Hi, Paul.
Hello. I don't understand what's going on with the system with this probation and bail. No, I think 3 times you offend, get charged 3 times, you should be thrown in jail for a lengthy amount of time, and just like the States, 3 times and you're out. Now here, I don't know what's going on. This is whether we don't have enough room for prisoners. It's just ridiculous. I was a security officer for the town of Tillsonburg for a while, and as a security guard for a mall. And I had so many people arrested, they would be out the very next day, for shoplifting, drinking, and carrying on. That's nothing serious.
Yeah.
But a police officer getting shot, and I just hope he's not out on bail now. I mean, that's attempted murder. Hopefully he'll be put away. 3 times they should be thrown away for a while. Throw the key away. Let him spend some time.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Kind of like a play on the 3 strike laws they have in the U.S., where if you've been granted bail and you breach your bail conditions 3 times, you don't get bail anymore. You have to wait in remand until your trial. That's what you mean?
Exactly.
I could get behind that. That makes a certain number of sense. Because, it's the concern, Paul. I'm sure you can appreciate the concern that you don't want people who are truly innocent getting caught up and detained for a crime that they're eventually going to be acquitted on. But you can appreciate that concern, I'm sure. But the police keep saying they keep using the words prolific offenders. If somebody's a prolific offender, if they're known to police, if they're in and out of the police station all the time, at a certain point, enough's enough, Paul.
Yes. I'm just strongly, I can't believe that this is happening in this country, that we're allowing this to happen and repeat offenders over and over again. And I'm scared for my family. Every town that you go to anymore, it's just getting worse and worse. And I don't know. I don't know if there's a cure for it or not, but I think they should be put away. That's all I got to say.
But you'd like to see the federal government go back in and change those laws again and make them even tougher. They did strengthen them a little bit, but it doesn't seem like it's going far enough for you.
No, it has not.
Okay.
From what I've seen, I've had my life threatened, my family's life threatened by these individuals. They're not afraid of authority whatsoever. They need to be, disciplined.
Yeah, more discipline. Yeah, tough on crime. Get tougher on crime.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Paul, thank you. We're running into the break. I appreciate your call today.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Paul. That's how it works. Call in, have your say on the air. That was Paul in Cambridge. Have a couple callers from Kitchener on the line. Robin, Steve, hang on. We will get to you after the bottom of the hour here. We just have to stop to get the news on. Again, talking about bail reform. That debate was reignited in the House of Commons yesterday. The federal government pointing its fingers at the province pointing its fingers at the federal government. What do you think? That's what I'm interested in. 1-833-668-2577. A short break. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you think it's too easy for repeat offenders to get out on bail in this country? That debate is lighting up again after the terrible story out of Toronto. Police officer shot in the line of duty. He's going to be okay. He's going to make a full recovery. The person accused of shooting him was arrested back in May, charged with a dozen different offenses. Out on bail. Out on bail. What do you think about that? Let's get back to the callers. Up next is Robin in Kitchener. Hi, Robin.
Hi, David.
What are your thoughts on this one? It's a tough topic. Curious to hear what you have to say.
I don't think it's a tough topic. I think it's a no-brainer. We need to definitely toughen up the laws, and people know people now that have had their vehicle stolen or had a crime against them. It's gotten way out of hand. And thank you for playing that whole clip from the House of Commons, because you don't hear that on the news, because most people don't listen to the House of Commons. And the answer by the Liberal minister about the criminals' rights was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I wasn't very impressed by that. I wasn't very impressed by that at all. I mean, I think we can all agree, Robin, it's important that we have a justice system with principles, one of them being you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But when you have story after story of people committing violent crime when they are on probation for a previous conviction or bail awaiting trial on another crime they're accused of, that's a problem. I don't feel the Liberal House leader in that clip that you're referencing, she said, you and I, Robin, we need to be concerned that the Conservatives are ready to trample our charter rights. I'm not really buying that. How about you?
Absolutely, I agree. It's absolutely ridiculous that she said that. It's ridiculous that she even thought of saying that. That's the government we have in place, the woke government we have in place, and they have fixed it a little bit, but why was it put to that point in the first place where the same criminal can do the same crimes over and over and over and over?
Well, to be fair...
have their hands tied.
Yeah, I hear you, Rob, but to be fair, the other side of the coin, which the Justice Minister spoke about in the House yesterday, is they say, look, we changed the rules, we made it tougher, but it's on the provinces now. It's provincial judges who grant bail. It's provincial remand centers that are overcrowded. Do you think there's something to that? Is there a shared blame here between the federal government and Mr. Ford in Toronto?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on the provincial stuff, but I know it's probably provincially to blame too, but I would say it's more the federal government.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Robin, thank you for your call today. Really appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you.
It's Robin in Kitchener. And again, you don't need to be an expert to really understand how it works. I'll make it as simple as I can for you. I'm not an expert. but this is my understanding. You've got provincial remand centers, provincial jails. They're overcrowded. There are not enough of them. There are not enough staff. So lots of people are waiting too long in jail to get a trial date, and we have trials being thrown out because the delay has been too long. At the same time, we have overcrowded remand centers. They need to get people out so they can bring people in. So there is an element of provincial responsibility there. But at the end of the day, the Criminal Code of Canada is at federal jurisdiction. The feds are the only people who can actually change the laws. The provinces just have to administer the system. Up next, we have on the phones at 1-833-668-2577, Steve in Kitchener. Hi, Steve.
How you doing? So I'm glad you finished up with that little tidbit there about the federal government. But I think it's pretty obvious that the entire system is flawed, and it needs to be completely overhauled. But I mean, if you wanted to just simplify it and just stick to the problem at hand here, dealing with parole, there's a pretty simple solution. First of all the judges, they should be reviewed, publicly reviewed, every so often. It is every 3 years, 2 years. You'll have people, the same way they draw a jury, sit down, review the judge's recommendations, all of the things he's done, all of the kickbacks, all of the where he has sentenced people and then they go out and they repeat offend, all those details made available to the public so the public can review it and decide whether or not he's fit for the bench. Secondly, for capital crimes and the more serious crimes, if you want to stop these light sentences and all the bleeding heart liberalism that's going on with, it's a really simple thing. If a person is allowed out on bail and is put on parole and the kid goes out there and reoffends, that judge should share in some of the blame. And that would nip the bud right there. You wouldn't have any more issues. The judges would stop going soft gloves and light hands and start treating people the way they deserve to be treated. I'm sorry, you're a criminal. You made a choice and you pay for it. Why are we all paying for it with repeat and all these families that have to go through this over and over and over again? I hate Rob Ford. I'll be perfectly honest, but I'm a conservative, and I very rarely agree with what he says. But the only reason it's news is because he said it. Every other person says the exact same thing. Our laws are too lax. It's a joke. We have people coming here, committing all kinds of crime. They get caught. They're out on bail. They leave. They flee the country. It's got to stop.
Okay, Steve. Thank you for your opinion today. I appreciate that. Steve in Kitchener there. Let's take one more before we stop. Who's up next here? It's Mark in Calgary. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Hello, dude. Thanks for taking my call. To be honest, I very rarely, if ever, phone in for these kind of things. But this is a subject that does motivate me, and it should motivate all Canadians, because this isn't just a big city crime anymore. It's not a big city issue. I think, there's a few things to touch on here. I mean, Canada isn't what Canada was, say, 20 years ago. You look at our culture is changing. Our immigration laws are very laxed and changing. We have a mass import of new population, new Canadians, should we say.
Yep.
And not all of them are vetted, of course, like they used to in terms of their contribution to Canadian society when they choose to come to Canada. And I include myself on that. I'm British by birth. I'm Canadian by choice. I had to jump through hoops to come here and to bring my family and contribute to Canadian society. But that's changed, and these need to be taken into consideration with our laws. But the lack of accountability, and as any parent and mature adult would tell you, if there's no accountability, then you're not going to get any compliance.
Yeah.
When criminals are repeat offenders, and some previous listeners have commented some value comments, but I don't even think they should get 3 strikes. I think they get 2. One, we all make mistakes. One, they can make a mistake. But after the second one, then I think there's, the writing's on the wall. And you look at the police, they're going out and doing their job, and it must be so soul-destroying for them to see the courts just letting these people back on the street. Certainly, I think the judges need to be accountable for their decisions, and maybe there should be a review of a judge's performance. He should have a review by some judicial committee. But the biggest problem we have is there's no accountability. The law is a joke, and people will continue to break the law if they see that there's no accountability.
Okay, Mark, well said. Mark, thank you. Thank you for those thoughts. I appreciate that. We have to run for our break here. Mark in Calgary, interesting thoughts. 2 callers in a row touching on the idea of more accountability for judges. You agree with that? Disagree with that? 1-833-668-2577. Hang on the line. We're back very shortly. Short break here. More phone calls on the other side. This is Talk Back on News Radio. I'm David Smith.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Talking about bail reform. Back in the news in a big way, Pierre Poilievre's always saying, bail not jail, bail not jail. Well, the Trudeau Liberals counter that they did, in fact, toughen bail laws in this country. Those laws have been on the books now for 10 months, since January 2024, but did they go far enough? Did they go far enough? Are you still worried it's too easy for repeat offenders to get out of jail on bail? Back to the phones. We have Lauren in Cambridge. Hi.
Hi, Dave?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I'd like to give your listeners a real-world example as to what police officers incur in a day-to-day situation.
Please, please.
I was a police officer for 15 years. I lost faith in the judicial system after seeing so many shortcomings, and I chose to walk away from my position. But here's an example. In the municipality that I worked at, we had a surge in the weekend of a lot of break-ins into homes. So everybody was alerted to be on the lookout and pay extra caution, see if we could locate this person that's responsible. So as luck would have it, I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I arrested the individual who was inside of a house with stolen property. We arrested him, or I arrested him, brought him to the police station, found out where he was staying with the key that they had in his pocket. He was staying at a local motel. We executed a search warrant in the motel, and we found stolen goods from 20-plus residents in our city.
Oh, my gosh.
So I said, wow, we got a big one here. So anybody that's convicted about anything, when we do a police check on them, the only thing that we're allowed to see is what convictions. If they've been charged and not convicted, we're not allowed to see it. So the things that this individual had done over the past decade is 2 lines of typewritten text. Line 1 will say the charge, and line 2 will give the disposition. This individual's criminal record was over 2 feet long in criminal printouts.
Wow.
So now we have a habitual criminal. We have him in custody for 25 break-ins into houses. If you look in the Criminal Code of Canada, they say that a man's home is his castle, and you're subject to life imprisonment if you violate his home. So we went to court, and because of this guy knows how to play the system, and he uses legal aid, he elected to go judge and jury. So advanced the clock 2.5 years. That's how long it took to get the trial. We eventually had a trial, and he was found guilty. And I've seen this happen so often, David. What they do is they adjourn it for sentencing. So I made a point of saying, okay, Lauren, let's follow this and see what actually the outcome is. So a year after he was found guilty, the judge had him stand before him in the court, and he told him that he was an excellent candidate for rehabilitation and put him on probation.
Oh, come on. Excellent candidate for rehabilitation.
And I resigned from my position.
Wow.
So there's your system, sir.
It's not often, Lauren, that people call in and say things that leave me kind of speechless, but I don't even know what to say about that.
Nor do I, sir. I like to think that I'm a fine citizen. I'm a senior citizen now. The only thing I ever got in my life was a parking ticket, but there's no respect anymore. None. It's I'm so disappointed. On Hespel Road in Cambridge just yesterday, Waterloo Regional Police has a sign up, now hiring. The Mount RCMP, now nobody wants to get involved anymore. The system is failing so badly.
Yeah. Lauren, thank you for calling in and sharing that story. I really appreciate that.
Okay, have a good day, sir. And thank you for taking my time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care. We have to stop for a short break. Hang on the line. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Take more calls on bail reform. How about that story? That gentleman gave up his career in law enforcement because he just couldn't take it anymore. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
David Smith in for Rob Snow today, talking about bail. Is it too easy for repeat offenders to get out on bail in this country? Are you concerned about that? Ruby in Calgary up next on the phones. Hi, Ruby.
Hi.
What's your what? Yeah, I can. Yeah, thanks for the call. What are your thoughts on this one?
So I'm a fourth-year sociology student, and I think what's most important in my courses is that we're taught to look at the bigger picture. And I strongly believe that crime is so correlated to the growth of the population, and it's also correlated to holes in our system. So obviously, as the population grows, crime is going to grow. And the last statistic was in 2023, and that was 778 homicides, across our nation. But that is kind of congruent with in 1991 and 1992, where it was 755 and 734. So I think there's also, with a lot of the calls coming in, this fearmonger around the growth of crime in our city. And I think, just not establishing the connection between the growth of population and the growth of crime, that obviously the population grows, there's going to be more opportunity for crime to occur. I think that is missing a large part of the problem. And I think, too, with the broken system, that crime is a reflection of holes in the system, of gaps in lower socioeconomic groups and populations where they're missing a lot of the resources that they need. And I totally believe that a lot of our funding should be going to that, more mental health courts and more opportunities for people who do need mental health support to be able to achieve that.
Okay, very interesting. I don't disagree with you at all on that, Ruby. You know, if we had well-funded resources, for example, mental health treatment for people who need it, who can't afford it on their own, that would certainly take out a lot of those, I believe you call them social determinants of crime, if I have that correct. Yeah. But at the same time, you do have people who are concerned. It has become a political issue. But it sounds to me, Ruby, like you believe, Ruby, when you put it in the right context, people committing crimes while out on bail is not as big of an issue as people might think it is?
I don't think it's not a large issue. I think it totally shows gaps in our justice system. And obviously that from judges to lawyers to the criminals themselves, that everybody's going to have a bias. And whether that bias takes over in the justice system is really what we should be more addressing, right? We can't just write off a whole group of people and just say that they're criminals and that's just them and they should be locked away forever and not actually get the resources that they need. But I do agree that we should have tougher sentences. It shouldn't just be that somebody gets 8 years, because life imprisonment, that should be a possibility, right? Okay. And we should use harsher punishment as a deterrent. But I don't think that it should be without extra support and resources specifically for mental health, because in lower socioeconomic groups, the ones that largely do commit crimes like robberies and thefts and gun violence and knife crime, that I think a lot of that should be addressed with mental health support, and that mental health courts should be used a lot more than they are right now.
Very interesting. Thank you for your call today, Ruby. We have to run for our break at the top of the hour. I appreciate the call today. Hope you call back sometime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ruby in Calgary. Different perspective there. Okay, very interesting. All right, 1 hour down already. Moving very quickly today here on Talk Back. We have a whole other hour with open phone lines coming up after the break here. We can keep talking about bail reform. Can talk about some other issues. I have some other stories we can get into as well. Please hang on the line if you can. I will get to your calls coming up very shortly here. We just have to stop for the latest breaking news, and then we're back on Talkback. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
It's David Smith here in with you for the hour, taking your calls at 1-833-668-2577. If you're just joining us, we have been talking about bail reform. A police officer shot in Toronto this week. He's going to be okay. The person accused of shooting him was out on bail at the time. Premier Doug Ford's taken exception with the federal government for not strengthening bail laws enough. The feds say the provinces have a responsibility to build more remand centers and appoint judges who will apply the new bail rules. What do you think? Do you think it's still too easy for repeat offenders to get out on bail in this country? 1-833-668-2577. Up next on the line, we have Boren in Calgary. Thank you for waiting. You're on the air.
Hi, this is first-time caller. Thank you very much for taking my call. I agree with the earlier caller, Mark from Calgary. I second that his thoughts that the immigration process is very easy. When I came in Canada from Pakistan, migrated, I had to go through a number of vetting process, including my school record. I was in my teens, and I got the admission here, and even an NOC, which is called a non-offensive clearance certificate by the police. So much so my school record if I was anywhere involved in the fight. Over the weekend, I have witnessed an assault here in Calgary on a journalist.
Yeah.
And I was there, and I could see that if I wasn't there to aid him, something awful would have happened. And this man, who's a journalist, very well known in South Asian community. Now, my thing is that police was there. All the resources are there. Police was there within 1 minute of time of we calling 911. Within half an hour, they identify the offender and got the picture on his Facebook, and I have witnessed that this is the guy. But my worry is, since 2008, it is becoming very easy for these offenders. They will get arrested, but they will be out on a bail next function, your community function. You see that they are standing there, and then you are worried about your own well-being. So the bail system has to be very strict. We need to build the remand center. We properly educate our judges and to have their performance by judicial inquiry. So therefore, that's the only way. Otherwise, new population is coming. The vetting process is not very strict. Everybody is getting here. We welcome. This is a country of immigrants. But the thing is, they will make a crime and come out. They know it. They will get the lawyer, and they will be on the street within no time. And I am afraid of my family and myself that what is happening here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the call today, sir. I appreciate that. Call back anytime. Boran in Calgary. Yeah, it was a radio journalist in Calgary was assaulted. He says it's in connection to reporting he was doing on tensions in the South Asian community there. The whole issue of the Khalistan movement. It's a tough one. It is, because anyone accused of a crime in this country ought to be innocent until proven guilty. But I do think consideration can be made for people who have long, and I don't mean mild criminal history. I don't mean one conviction for a mistake 30 years ago. I mean, these are people who are in and out of the justice system month after month after month. 1-833-668-2577. Up next is Bruce in Gibbons, Alberta. Hi, Bruce.
Yes, hi. I think you'll find I have a little bit of an interesting perspective here.
Okay.
Just to give you some background, I worked with the healthcare system in conjunction with the courts. We had assistant chief crown prosecutor assigned to us, and we would receive offenders, criminal code offenses that the individual had committed, And the thing was, we had two advantages. Because we're working with the Assistant Chief Crown Prosecutor, we could get their rap sheets. So we could look at those very carefully, and we did. And we also had the mental health history. So we looked at that very carefully and decided, A, whether we're going to take them or turn them back to the courts for management through the Crown Prosecutor. The thing is, it was a very good program, and we sometimes would reject people because of the degree or the extent of their rap sheet, or we would work with them. We would make sure they'd have to, follow us with mental health and do whatever addictions that they had to receive, follow up with the psychiatrist, and on and on. So it was very effective. But here's the big problem: is that it's probably systemic, where too many people are getting put on bail for these long rap sheets or these very violent offenses, and so they're slipping through the cracks on that. And I sort of like the idea of the maybe these judges who release these people on bail that have these severe histories. Maybe they shouldn't be released on bail. Anyways, that's my thoughts.
So, Bruce, you would. Another caller has touched on the idea of having more public accountability for judges, some kind of review mechanism that would be public. Would you like to see something like that?
Well, in my case, it probably wasn't necessary because we had the top of the judge, Assistant Chief Crown Prosecutor working with us. But I'm wondering if maybe we're wrong. I don't know, but I fear that some of these people are getting bailed too easily, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then maybe that's only a 5% of the judges or 10%. I don't know, but I don't know what's coming from the federal government either in guidelines and this and that. And I hear what I've been hearing through the news over the last couple of years is that too many of these people are walking the streets and recommit fines. But can I say one last thing?
Yes. Yep.
I'm calling north of Calgary and your reception of your radio show because it's 50,000 watts or whatever. We get it, but I would love to see a part of your show rebroadcast in Edmonton. We lost our news format station here, and boy, we need you guys badly.
Oh, okay. Well, Bruce, I will run that up the flagpole for you. I'll see what the bosses have to say about that. How about that?
Yeah, because I think with the CRTC seeing that
it's tough. Yeah,
this one format on the station in Edmonton has gone belly up.
Yeah,
we yours would be an excellent show to get rebroadcast to Edmonton.
Well, thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Take care. That's kind of funny. Don't get me started on the CRTC. We'll be here for another hour. We have to stop for a break. More calls coming up on the other side. I'm David Smith. You're listening to News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The Trudeau government did pass a bail reform law. They did. When they say they made it tougher to get bail, they're not lying. It went into effect at the beginning of the year. So the Justice Minister federally says it's on the provincial court systems to apply those changes. That's up to judges, justices of the peace, who are appointed by provincial governments. All of that is true. The changes that the feds brought in have to do with what's known as reverse onus bail. Reverse onus means the accused needs to demonstrate why they should be eligible for bail. They have to prove they deserve bail. Usually it's the other way around. The Crown prosecutors have to prove to a court why someone shouldn't be eligible for bail. But these new reverse onus rules only apply to someone who's been charged with multiple violent offenses in the past. The man accused of shooting this Toronto police officer had a long rap sheet, but not for violent crimes. So on the one hand, it is fair for the Justice Minister to point out that bail decisions are made by provincial courts, but on the other hand, in this case, those new rules wouldn't have applied anyway. Does that mean the rules are too lax? What do you say? Let's get back to the phones here. It's David Smith in with you on Talkback today. Eric is up next from Calgary. Hi, Eric. You're on the air.
Hi, David. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome. What's your take?
So first, I just want to say the whole bail reform and justice system is a very complex issue. It's not going to be fixed by a stroke of a pen. You have all levels of government involved. You have the local government who is involved with the police, provincial government, like you mentioned. They hire the prosecutors, the judges, the remand centers, and then the federal government does the criminal code and the Supreme Court. So one of the biggest issues is you have Supreme Court justices either slamming down certain cases due to charter rights violations, etc., right? So then that pushes down to lower courts, and now these judges in the provincial courts, their hands are tied based on some of the Supreme Court rulings that are now become case laws.
Right.
So when these judges are tied, and then they can only set out based on law and case laws, they have to apply a long list of restrictions on these accused. But then, here's the thing. If these people can follow the rules in the first place, they probably wouldn't be breaking the law. So in a sense, all these restrictions that they place on the accused on bail, it's almost like it's ridiculous. Like they have no chance of following the long list of restrictions on them. So right out of the gate, they are set for failure.
Okay.
And another issue is when you look at accused who have been arrested, who's been booked, and now they're going in front of a JP to request for either bail or be remanded, a lot of provinces, those are done by police officers. And they are not trained as a prosecutor. So I think when the GP makes that decision, there is a lapse of information and possibly some legal issues there. So that's something that the province has to get involved. And then another caller mentioned is the whole mental health court.
Yeah.
Sure, there's a lot of mental health issues in society today. We have drug courts, mental health courts, Aboriginal courts. At the end of the day, it all comes down to money. Who is going to fund all these different resources, right? And then, of course, the last thing is building more provincial remand facilities. But you know what? Building jails does not buy you votes. Building schools, hiring more police officers, hiring nurses, doctors, those buy you votes, not jails. So there's no incentive for provincial government to be spending millions and millions into building more remand centers.
What if there was, though? The federal government could provide some incentive. If they say they're serious about public safety, they could provide some incentive there via tax treatment, no?
I 100% agree with you, and that's why I think this federal election would be very important for Canadians to go out to vote. Vote what's important to you. Is the climate change important to you, or is it the justice system? Is your rights more important to you? And again, it's not an easy fix, and it really comes down to Canadians go out to vote and voice what's important.
Eric, thank you for your call today. Great thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. We'll take one more here. Jeff in Calgary. Jeff, you're on the air.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, I got a couple personal stories where I had a friend come out to, well, I should more say acquaintance brought his friend out to my property and came back the next day and stole a bunch of stuff off of it. Found out who the person was that stole it. They were known in 5 different districts, basically from Red Deer to Calgary, and were just going on all these, stealing sprees and stealing whatever she wanted, and then would get put in the remand center, put in jail for a couple of days, and then would get released again and just back out on the streets. And so we talked to the cops and took a little bit into our own hands and found out where she was living. She was living in a stolen trailer in an RV site, and called the cops and got them to come, basically take her home away. And then she was just, got back down, and the next time I heard of her, she was down in Okotoks doing the same thing. So it's just catch and release. It's really too bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that person, they have rights under the charter just like you do, Jeff, but you're the one left holding the bag for their crimes in that story, right? What about your rights as a victim?
Yeah, they came out to my property, stole all my stuff. I had to put a chain across my driveway. I live out in rural, north of Calgary, and I had to put a chain across my driveway so that people weren't driving onto my property. They came out and tried to break into my sea cans to steal more stuff, and like my driveway is a kilometer long. They walked all the way out there, knowing that there's stuff out there to steal. So it's just too bad. So now everyone on my road is now put up like gates so that the criminals can't get out there.
So you think it is an issue for you, Jeff? Just the basic question, is it too easy for repeat offenders to get out on bail? It sounds like that's definitely touched your life.
Yeah, way too easy. And being known in 5 different districts, I called and talked to a bunch of the police officers in those districts. They're like, "Oh yeah, we know her. We catch her and release her all the time." Like she's, I don't know if they can't get these, charges to stick or what what the issue was, but yeah, just catch and release all the time. And she's obviously a repeat offender if all these districts know about her. And then she was found in a stolen truck with a whole bunch of other gear and way down in Okotoks. So it's just too bad.
Okay, I have to run, Jeff. Thank you for your call. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. David Smith here, in with you. This is Talk Back on News Radio. It's been very busy on the phones today. 1-833-668-2577. If you have some thoughts on the bail issue, I am wide open for you. Bill in Calgary, I see your call. Please hang on. We'll get to you in a few minutes here. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Time for a quick call before the news. It's going to be Bill in Calgary. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Some thoughts on bail reform.
Well, I think that for one thing, there has to be some practicality when judges are applying the rules to the sentencing, so to speak, particularly when it comes to probation. If you've got a repeat violent offender, I think it should be a no-brainer that there's no parole offered. And you have to look at it realistically. You got a guy who's already on probation, he's already committed violent offenses, and he knows he's in for maybe his 3rd time, and, he's looking at a long stretch of time, 10, 15, 20 years. What do you think this guy's going to do? He's going to party his butt off until he has to go to court. He doesn't care because he already knows he's going away, right? So, I think we have to look at it from the incentivization of the criminal, as well as what they're looking forward to in their journey through the legal system. But more importantly, I think that we need to examine the charter. I think you put it succinctly earlier. What about the rights of the victim? And, in the old days here, and I'm not that old, but I'm old enough, you were 16 years old, you committed a violent crime, you were treated as an adult, and you were in adult court. When the Young Offenders Act came in, well, now you can commit a violent crime up to the age of 18, and your worst-case scenario is 6 years, and your record is expunged at the end of it. That's not much of an incentive or a lesson in any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at the charter, and we have to say to ourselves, well, where does the rights of the individual stop relative to criminality? And, and where does the rights of the victim begin relative to criminality?
Yeah.
And that's not something anybody wants to do. Everybody runs around like chickens with their heads cut off from a political perspective when we talk about amendments to the Constitution or opening the Constitution up to deal with some of these things. But I think that these are subjects that most of the country agrees on.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be that difficult.
I hate to cut you off, Bill. We're right up against the break. Totally agree with you. Thank you. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
It's David Smith here, in for Rob Snow today. Thank you for joining us. We've been talking all show long about bail. Bail and probation for people with long histories of committing crimes, whether they were convicted for those crimes or if they're waiting for trial for crimes they've been charged with. A lot of people say it's too easy for them to get out on bail. Here's another story for you to consider. This one's pretty disturbing to me. Just to illustrate the scope of the issue that we're dealing with here, I found this in the Montreal Gazette, published earlier this week. Montreal police say they have arrested 5 people, including 3 minors, who were found with incendiary material early Wednesday morning and are investigating whether their motive may have been linked to the conflict in the Middle East. The city of Côte-Saint-Luc said in a statement that one of its public security officers observed a vehicle with suspicious occupants parked near a synagogue early Wednesday morning and called police. Inside the vehicle, police say they found incendiary material. 2 occupants, ages 20 and 22, were arrested. Côte-Saint-Luc said that what it described as a suspicious item was later found near the synagogue. The suspects have been released on a promise to appear in court. They were parked outside a synagogue with incendiary materials. It's an arson investigation. Released on a promise to appear in court. I hope they keep their promise. What do you think about that? 1-833-668-2577. Next, on the phones, we have Jerry from Waterloo. Hi, Jerry.
Hello, David. Unfortunately, that story doesn't surprise me. I guess it just shows how maybe overwhelmed our so-called judicial system is because of the way society seems to be falling apart a little bit. The problems could be just, I don't know when the last time we built any correctional facilities, or what they'd like to call correctional facilities.
Nope. Jerry, we've lost you. Oh, I'm sorry about that, Jerry. We lost him. I wanted to hear what he had to say. He was bringing up a good point. When was the last time you heard about them building a new provincial remand center? We have one here in the city of Ottawa. It is notorious for being constantly overfull. And the big problem with that... Oh, I think we have Jerry back on the line. Jerry, is that you?
Yeah, sorry about that.
The big problem with that, Jerry, I was just about to say, is nobody wants one in their backyard. Who wants a jail in their community, right?
Well, true. But would you rather have a jail in your community or all these people running wild all the time like they're currently doing now and free? You can't have it both ways. But where I was going to go is Pierre Poilievre made a comment in the House of Commons a little while ago where he followed 40 individuals in the city of Vancouver for a year, 1 calendar year. And do you know how many times those 40 individuals were arrested in 1 year?
You'll have to remind me. I know it was something shocking.
Over 6,000 times.
Yeah, 6,000 times. Yeah. Yeah, what do you think about that? I mean, clearly that's a broken system, Jerry, no?
It is very broken. That's 150 arrests per individual. That's every other day. One day you're in, one day you're out. The next day you're in, the next day you're out. Like, that's just a continuous revolving door. I have no idea what these crimes are, and obviously, I'm sure they've looked for an extreme an example. However, it still is an example. 6,000 arrests for 40 individuals in 1 year.
I can only imagine being the arresting officers. So this guy again, and we're going to see him tomorrow, and we'll see him the next day. How is there not a pathway for people like that? I just mean in extreme cases.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the charter issue is very real. I'm not discounting that. But in extreme cases like that, there has to be a better way.
There has to be. Well, look at the waste of resources. So we're tying up these same officers every day, arresting the same people for the same stuff. I'm sure there's better things that they can be doing. And I mean, how jaded they must be with the system. Because they're just, bring them in, they're back out, bring them in, back out, and there's just no change. Like, that's definition of insanity right there, doing the same thing every day, expecting something different.
Yeah, it is. I had a caller earlier on the show, Jerry, I think in the last hour, who said he used to be a police officer and he gave up the profession. He found something else to do with his life because it was too demoralizing for him. And I'm sure he's not the only one.
No. And then we're very critical of our police forces at times too, aren't we?
Yeah. All right, Jerry, thank you for your thoughts. I'm going to jump.
Have a great day and have a good week.
You too, Jerry. Thank you. Let's go to from Jerry to Mary in Kitchener. Hi, Mary.
Oh, hi, Dave. Listen, Dave, I want to say congratulations to you. You're doing a fantastic, fabulous job on this show.
Thank you, Mary. Your check is in the mail.
I really, I mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
I really like the way you handle the things, and you don't waste too much time on, whatever. You know what I mean.
I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, but
so what are your thoughts today? What are your thoughts today?
Keep the job.
Okay. Is that all you wanted to say, or did you have an opinion on it?
Well, the lady said, do I want to talk on the, what was the subject?
Bail for criminals.
Bail. Well, of course. I'm like everybody else. There's something wrong here. There's something wrong. We have to fix it. But anyway, hey, keep doing what you're doing. I love you.
Well, thank you, Mary. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Very kind. Take care. I hope my boss is listening. Mark? Did you get that, Mark? I'll send you the clip after. All right, we're running right into a break here. Every line is available. For the first time in the last 2 hours, we have cleared the phone lines if you want to get in to talk about bail or really anything else. We've still got 20 minutes left. 1-833-668-2577 is the number to call. We're winding down the show on a Friday. Give me a call. Let's talk about something. I'm David Smith. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
15 minutes before the top of the hour. That's 15 minutes to have your say for this week here on News Radio. I'm David Smith, in for Rob Snow today. Back to the phones. We have a few callers on the line. First up is Kelly in Calgary. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. What do you want to talk about?
So I've been listening for the last while and hearing some really interesting points that people have been calling in with. I think there's a lot of fair concern from the general citizens on wanting people that are actually posing risks to, not be necessarily out on the streets. And I think some people have made good points about the likely mentality of, people who don't care anymore, ending up with just partying in their time out on the streets, knowing that they're about to be thrown back in the system. And I think that, there are shocking examples coming out of the 6,000 arrest case in Vancouver, was it?
Yeah.
But I do like hearing things like that the bail reform is being looked at where it's now on the onus of the individual to prove that they deserve bail, that they deserve that responsibility. And I do think that it's important that the justice systems are, implementing these laws or these rules. But I do think that's something that's being kind of touched around and kind of talked about here kind of loosely around is a use of resources and a misuse of resources. And ultimately, I think one big piece here that needs to be kind of talked about more is basically mental health. These people that are multiple offenders, that they're struggling in their lives, they need to be having the right systems and setups in whether that's shortly after arrest or if it's when they're being proposing for bail, that there's the right systems being there to support mental health and making sure that we're not just cycling people through the system, but that we're supporting them to be the best selves that they can be and to get on their feet and to have meaning in their lives, because a lot of this can be tied with a lack of meaning and a lack of purpose and ending up just cycling through the system.
No, 100%. I totally agree with you on that. I mean, for a majority of cases, I think that's definitely a lot of what's driving some of these headlines that you see. But it also sounds, Kelly, like you would agree with me that there are some cases where people aren't going to be rehabilitated and they are a danger to the public. And I don't think that they should be out on bail if they have a rap sheet that's 2 feet long.
I agree with the concept of like a 2 feet rap list. And this, I think we're basically in agreement is like a person has to truly prove that they are deserving of that freedom. If they've had that, if we've basically seen that, well, that right of that freedom should be taken away, you have to prove it. And if you, I don't agree that, I don't agree that no one can be redeemed. But I think that there's absolutely far more difficult cases out there, and that with the right systems in place, mental health support and so forth, potentially you can get people back on their feet. And I can't necessarily exact examples, but I think that we shouldn't give up on people either. Like, that's a part of human rights and a part of, I believe, my culture as a Canadian is believing in the individual and the right to have those freedoms. And so we should also be doing, a service for where other systems may have failed them in the past, whether that's the micro systems of their families or the macro systems of our governments and our social and education and so forth systems. We should be having, if someone's hit rock bottom, we should be doing our best to make sure that we can get them on their feet again so that they're not continuing to abuse the system or be cycling in the system or wasting resources.
Okay, Kelly, great thoughts today. Thank you so much for that call. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, great thoughts there. Moving along to Marvin in High River, Alberta. Hello, Marvin.
How's it going today, Dave?
It's going fine. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I would agree with Kelly on that. I know that when the Harper government was in power, they cut back on social programs and rehabilitation in the penitentiary system. And to bring that back and help the and then get a trade in welding or carpentry or whatever you wanted to do. And I'm not sure what it's like today, but I know that he cut back on a lot of the programs that would help these guys get out and make a decent life for themselves. And
sure. I'm not against, rehabilitative justice as a concept. I learned about that when I was in school. It does make eminent sense. It's hard when you start dealing with the realities of the real world and trying to care for individuals in a system like the justice system. I guess I would say, on the Stephen Harper stuff, I wasn't on the air back then, but we've had a Trudeau government for 9 years now who's very much gung-ho on the rehabilitative justice. So if there were program cuts there, you'd think that they've had more than enough time to restore the funding. I don't know for certain, but I do know that a lot of people are calling me and they're very concerned about these cases with the repeat offenders out on bail.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, it went from the Harper government to the Liberal government, the Trudeau government, and it's when your government is allowed to appoint a Liberal judge or a conservative judge, that's biased. And for the Liberal government to allow terrorists into the country, it's no different. So when you're appointing judges, they have to be non-biased.
Yeah.
And they have to follow by the guidelines that are put in place for sentencing and everything.
Okay.
And there should be, for people that are reoffending, they should know in the courts whether this person has a potential to be rehabilitated and put him through the courses instead of just letting them out to go and play again.
Okay. All right. We have to leave it there for today, Marvin, but thank you. Appreciate your thoughts today.
Okay.
Marvin in High River. I'm David Smith. We have to stop one more call on the line. If Afif in Waterloo can hang on, we will get to you next. I'm David Smith, as I said. Winding down the show here on a Friday. It's Talk Back on News Radio. We're back right after this.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Winding down talk back for this week. David Smith here with you. One more call to take before the top of the hour. A quick one from Afif in Waterloo. Hi, Afif.
Hey, how's it going, David?
Good. Some quick thoughts, please, on bail for repeat offenders.
All I was wanting to say was basically when the first time that the person gets arrested, they should after they should get their bail. But then the second time or third time they should not. They should basically go to trial, have the judge look at them and see what what type of offense they did and send them to jail, not send them out on bail again because they will do something again. But for the first time, it's okay. Let them have bail if they want, but only for minor offenses like stealing or something like that, but not no murders or anything like that.
Right. So you think it's too easy, it's too lax for people who have a criminal record to get back out on bail?
Right. Exactly. It is way too easy.
Okay.
And also, I would say basically they should get their mental health check at a hospital before they get out even. So just to see hey, are these guys when they go to jail, after jail they're getting out, they should get a mental check by a doctor to see if they're still okay.
Right. Okay, thank you for your thoughts, Afif. I appreciate that.
Have a good day.
Thank you. That will be the last call of the week. Wow, very busy today. Lots of people still concerned about that issue. It's been in and out of the news since last summer. Well over a year now. The federal government has taken some action. They've made it a little bit stricter, but I'm hearing from a lot of people who think that it's still too lax. Look, it's a tough one. Dealing with issues of criminal justice, it's very complicated. As many of my callers have pointed out today, it's a tough one. I can't tell you that it's cut and dry because it's not. The right to bail is a cornerstone of our entire justice system. Bail protects innocent people accused of crimes from detention by the government until they are proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. The presumption of innocence is a pillar on top of which the whole justice system is built. But at the same time, we've seen a swath of cases in the past 2 years where people with long criminal records have committed violent crimes while out on bail, and that's not okay. Because as important as charter protected rights are for all Canadians, and I do believe that, the victims of crime often get the short end of the stick, in my opinion, when it comes to how our systems uphold and protect those rights. That's it for me. Thank you so much for listening. I've been David Smith. Your latest local breaking news is coming up next. Don't touch that dial. We will be back in on Monday with another talk back. You're listening to News Radio.